A life-or-death moment in the ER took a shocking turn when a black doctor rushing to save a patient was stopped by a cop who'd pulled a gun on him. The tension in that moment was unbelievable, and what happened next not only left everyone stunned, but also sparked a chain of events that changed the hospital forever. This story isn't just about one doctor or one officer. It's about bias, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. As emotions ran high, people on both sides of the confrontation were forced to face hard truths that would ripple far beyond that night. Stick around, because you won't believe how this one moment reshaped lives, careers, and an entire community. It all started late one night when Dr. Marcus Hayes, a respected emergency physician, got an urgent page. A patient was crashing, and every second counted. He barely had time to grab his coat as he rushed from his car toward the hospital doors. But as he approached, bright red and blue lights cut through the darkness, and a loud voice shouted, "Stop right there." Confused and breathless, Marcus froze. A police officer, hand on his holstered gun, demanded to see his ID. Marcus tried to explain he was a doctor and needed to get inside, but the officer wasn't listening. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, the ER team was scrambling to stabilize the patient, not knowing their best chance at survival was being held up just steps away. Tensions flared in the parking lot, drawing the attention of passers-by. And as Marcus tried to reason with the officer, something unexpected happened that changed everything. Dr. Hayes felt his heart racing, but not from the urgency of the call anymore. It was the officer's unwavering glare and the way his hand hovered near his weapon. Marcus tried again, calmly stating his name and position at the hospital. He even pointed toward his ID badge, clipped to his coat, but the officer's suspicion didn't waver. Inside, nurses and doctors worked frantically to save the patient, unaware that the doctor they had paged was still outside. The moments stretched longer, and a few staff members began to notice something unusual near the entrance. A nurse peeked through a window and saw the confrontation, her heart sinking. She knew Marcus well and immediately ran to alert security. Meanwhile, Marcus was growing desperate. Every second spent arguing was another second his patient didn't have. He had to get inside, but the officer's escalating tone made it clear. This wasn't going to be simple. Marcus took a deep breath, fighting to stay composed as the officer's voice grew sharper. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Would the officer listen, or would things take an even darker turn? The tension was palpable, and people nearby started to gather, unsure of what was happening, but sensing the urgency in Marcus's voice. Inside the hospital, word of the situation spread quickly. A security guard hurried toward the entrance, followed by the nurse who had spotted the commotion. The team in the ER was still battling to save the patient, completely unaware that their best chance at a breakthrough was trapped just outside. Marcus knew he had to make a choice. His patient's life hung in the balance, but the officer's rigid stance showed no sign of budging. As the nurse and security guard approached the scene, the air seemed to freeze. What happened next would change everything. Just as the nurse and security guard reached the entrance, something completely unexpected happened. Another officer arrived on the scene, responding to a call from the first about a suspicious individual. The new arrival quickly assessed the situation, and for a brief moment, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope that reason might prevail. But instead, the second officer questioned why Marcus had been stopped in the first place, hinting that it might not be as simple as it appeared. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, the patient's condition worsened. The ER team was running out of options, and the clock was ticking. One of Marcus's colleagues tried calling his phone, only to hear it ringing faintly, abandoned in his car during the rush to the hospital. As tensions boiled over outside, the crowd of onlookers grew, and emotions ran high. Then, just as Marcus thought he might break through the standoff, the officer took a step that shocked everyone watching. As the officer stepped closer, tensions reached a breaking point. Marcus raised his hands slightly, trying one last time to explain the urgency of the situation. Suddenly, The nurse who had rushed outside intervened, standing between Marcus and the officers. She pointed to his badge and firmly explained that he was the lead doctor needed for a critical patient in the ER. The crowd murmured, some recording the interaction on their phones, while others called out for the officers to let him through. For a moment, it seemed the situation would de-escalate, but just as Marcus turned to head inside, a voice from the crowd yelled, "He shouldn't have to beg to save someone's life." The officer, realizing how the situation had spiraled, finally stepped aside, but the damage was done. Marcus sprinted into the hospital, his focus snapping back to the patient in crisis. In the ER, the team worked alongside him to stabilize the patient, barely pulling off a miraculous save. But as Marcus caught his breath, the final twist came. The hospital administration, alerted to the situation, launched an immediate investigation. What they uncovered about systemic failures and bias would lead to reforms that no one saw coming, changing the way the hospital operated forever. In the days that followed, the incident sparked conversations throughout the hospital and the community. Dr. Marcus Hayes remained professional, but the weight of what happened lingered. The patient he saved made a full recovery, but the story didn't end there. Videos of the confrontation outside the hospital circulated widely, drawing attention to deeper issues of bias and accountability. The hospital administration took swift action, not only addressing the behavior of the officers, but also reviewing their own policies. They implemented new diversity training, strengthened security protocols, and created a program to ensure all staff had safe access to their workplace. For Marcus, the experience was a painful reminder of the challenges he still faced, but it also ignited a movement for change. Standing before his colleagues at a staff meeting, he shared one simple message: "When we work together, we save lives, and that starts with seeing each other."